but I think imitating your heroes is an essential part of developing your style. It's something that everyone goes through. It's completely normal. And as long as you recognize that you're developing and that you're practicing and you're acknowledging that you are imitating your heroes, I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. Because I think sometimes, people get it in their head about copying and imitating, but frankly, I think it's essential. I think it's actually unavoidable.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Open Studio. Today, I'm joined by lettering artist and illustrator Jessica Molina. Jessica creates bold, vibrant work for brands in beauty, lifestyle, and culture. Her clients include Sol de Janeiro, Garnier, Snapchat, Cassetify, and many more. Alongside her commercial practice, she shares insights on building a sustainable creative career through her newsletter, The Thriving Artist. She's passionate about helping artists develop strong creative identities, protect their creative energy, and build careers rooted in freedom and self-trust. Jessica, I'm so happy to have you here. Another Latina like me, finally.
Yay! I know. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. This is really exciting.
Jessica, I want to talk about everything, the work that you do, your passion for also sharing what you know. And I would love to start by the beginning. I would love to first understand how was your life growing up? And it's interesting because you're joining now from your mom's house, which with whom you're staying over. So I would love to hear a little bit about how was your life as the little Jessica Molina back then.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my parents immigrated to the United States from Nicaragua, which is in Central America. So I was born here in the States. I was born in Colorado, weirdly enough, because I hardly ever go there anymore. But I've lived most of my life in Texas. That's where we moved after my parents started their careers and everything. So I grew up in a first generation American household. You know, I would say I was a very creative child. I loved drawing. Drawing was like probably my favorite thing to do. And my brother and I have a brother who's 4 years younger than me. So we're relatively close in age. My brother and I would draw things together. We would like make things to play. I remember we would draw our own fake laptops on paper because we loved having like having a computer was a big deal back then. This is the early 90s. So it was like only select few people had computers and we thought laptops were just like the coolest thing ever. So we would make our own with paper and like pretend we were doing stuff. We pretend we were like Men in Black, which was like a popular movie at that time, like in the mid 90s. And so we were always doing a lot of creative stuff. Yeah.
Interesting. If you love lettering but feel stuck between practicing and creating work you're actually proud of, this is for you. I'm hosting the Lettering Design Roadmap, a free live workshop series happening March 23rd through 30th, 2026. It's designed to give you the structure most creatives are missing: what to practice, how to practice it, and how to turn lettering into paid opportunities. You'll learn how skills develop from beginner to pro, the mistakes that keep talented designers get stuck in, and how to choose your professional path, even in an AI-driven world. It only happens once a year, and it's completely free. Sign up now at martinaflor.com/masterclass and join us.
So yeah.
And when did your your thing for illustration and lettering started?
So that came way later. My path has been very, as they say, everybody has their own path. My path has been very winding. I would say that, I was a creative kid, loved to draw, loved art, that kind of thing. But as I got older, I think, academics just took precedence. My parents both got their education here in the United States. They both got their degrees here, and they always told us the importance of getting an education as a way to get ahead in life and be successful and all those things. And of course, I think a lot of, children of immigrants can relate to feeling like you have a lot on your shoulders and you have a lot to prove. And I think that definitely was something for me. And so, I think art just kind of fell by the wayside. It wasn't anything particularly, nothing wrong or anything like that. It's just that academics kind of took precedence from that point on. And I was very studious and, obsessed with getting straight A's and stuff like that. And so as I grew up, I just drew less and less, and I didn't end up taking art classes in high school. Instead, I was in marching band because that's what most of my friends were doing.
Yeah.
So I was a musician for a little bit. And then when it was time to decide to go to college, I decided to be an architect. My aunt is an architect in Nicaragua, and I've always admired her. And she used to send me drawings that she would do, stuff that I would like. So I remember I had this drawing she did of Jasmine from Aladdin, because that was my one of my favorite movies. And she like did this beautiful drawing of Jasmine, and I had it like up in my room. And I was like, oh, she draws for a living. Like that was what was in my head, was like, even though she was an architect, it's like she draws, like she's an adult and she draws. I think that like really stuck in my head. And I was like, well, architecture is like a serious version of that, right? It's like the successful version of that, the like academic version of that. So I went to college for architecture, and it just wasn't a fit. It was not a good fit. It's a difficult major. It's extremely, it's just very time consuming, very demanding. And I didn't feel particularly good at it either. Like, I think thinking in three-dimensional space is really hard for me. I think some people have the opposite, where they think better in 3D. But for me, trying to design things in three-dimensional space was really hard. So I did fine academically, but in terms of like how I felt about my own work there, I was like, I'm not sure I'm really good at this, and I'm not sure I enjoy it either. And so, for me, like it was a big deal to basically walk away from that, because that was something that I thought I was going to do from a young age. Like I was just copying what I saw my aunt doing.
Yeah.
So it was really hard to walk away from that.
And how was that process? I can imagine that, deciding to walk away from that and having in the back of your head that you love drawing. As a kid, you were very creative, and I, it stuck with me this thing that you said, that you feel like as a daughter of an immigrant, you felt like you had a lot to prove, and that's why you try to go and get straight A's everywhere, and you went down the path that was a little bit more official, which was not necessarily. I think architecture has still like that creative side, and at the same time, it seems like more serious than going down the path of illustration or design or whatever it is that is more creative and artistic. And I wonder how it was for you, making that decision of saying like, hey, this is not what I want. I want to go in this other direction. And what did your parents and your family say about it as well? If they supported that, or that they also felt like, oh, okay, this is not what we imagined for you.
Yeah. So when I graduated, it was 2010. We were going through a terrible economic recession. If you're in the US, you remember that. I'm sure around the world you felt that. But so 2010 was a terrible year to be a new grad, because nobody was hiring, because we were going through a recession. So I had to do some soul searching. At that point, I had to decide, did I want to go get my master's? Because my degree was not accredited. So if I wanted to be a licensed architect eventually, I would have had to go get my master's, which meant 2 more years of school. And I just said, I can't do it. I can't do it. The 4 years were so hard on me. It's so demanding. And again, I didn't enjoy it. So I was like, why am I going to put myself through 2 more years of something I don't even enjoy? And so graphic design was actually kind of where I started. So, which again, I feel like was like the safer route. It's like, if I'm going to be artistic or creative, graphic design is safer, right? And how that happened was, we had exactly one graphic design class in college. I'd also done one in high school. And we learned basic Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, that kind of thing. And I remember that in my junior year, we all had to submit a portfolio of our work for review with our professors. And they were giving out awards for the portfolios. And I ended up winning an honorable mention for the design of my portfolio, not the projects in it, but the actual graphic design of the portfolio, the layout, the colors, the things that I chose to do. And I thought, I think I'm a lot better at that. I think I'm
Mm,
better at two-dimensional space. And I think you learn the same design principles in architecture. You're just applying them to three-dimensional space.
yeah.
So you learn all those Gestalt principles about, contrast and tension and all the things you would learn as a graphic designer or an illustrator, you also learn as an architect. It's just applied a different way. So I think this is a natural fit and it's something I really enjoy. And it was something I had been thinking about like in my senior year as
Mm.
well. And so that's kind of where that came from. I do remember my parents being a little bit like, okay, like this isn't what we thought, but they were very supportive. It was a really tough time. It took me about 9 months to get hired, after I graduated. So I was at their house and I was kind of like, I was feeling bad. Like I was feeling kind of like a failure and I was kind of feeling like very depressed. Like it was a very hard time to be a grad anyway. And then it was compounded by the fact that I had decided to change and pivot careers entirely. So they were supportive. And I was just applying to like whatever I could. And so 9 months later, I got my first job as a graphic designer. And I was working in house for this billboard advertising agency in San Antonio, Texas, which I did not live in. So I had to move over there. The pay was terrible. And it was just like a family owned business. But I was like, hey, I'm breaking in.
Yeah.
Someone wants to hire me professionally
Yeah.
to do this.
Oh, it's so great.
Yeah.
And also, I feel it's so thoughtful of you of, having realized like that there was something in that element or that feedback that you got from your teacher saying like, okay, you got that mention for doing great graphic design and saying like, okay, I think there's something for me there and pursuing that. I think a lot of people out there, they know they have a passion for something or they have an eye or a thing for something, but they don't take the chance to pursue it. And I think that's very courageous of you to have followed that path because it got you where you are right now, Jessica. And tell me,
Thank you.
tell me how did you get to do the actual work that you do nowadays, which is not
Yes.
graphic design, is really lettering and
Right.
illustration. So I wonder where was the time where you realized like, oh, okay, I think I'm good at this, and this is something that I want to develop further and I want to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in my graphic design career for total of 11 years. So I would say around 2016, I had changed jobs again and I had moved again. So this time I was living in Dallas, which is where I live now.
Yeah.
And I had moved from San Antonio and, I started a job. It was an in-house graphic design job. And I was really excited about it. It was a different environment from where I had come from. I had come from a very corporate, stuffy kind of job. And I was moving to something that was like not quite a startup, a little bit beyond a startup. They'd kind of proven, that there was a viable business happening there and they had a lot of employees. It was a very young office. The CEO was probably like 28 years old. Like it was a completely different environment. And I started that job. And then within a week, they said, hey, we are actually being bought out by our biggest competitor,
Mm.
which means that everybody's role is potentially changing. And so my role changed drastically because the things that they had hired me to do were no longer necessary because we were being added with this other company. So it was tough. I had just moved to a new city. I hadn't lived in this city before. I did have friends there from college, luckily, but essentially I had like started over for this job. And now they're telling me, yeah, the stuff we hired you to do is not going to be that anymore. We do have stuff for you to do, but it's different. And it was stuff that I didn't like. It was like making presentations, which I hate doing. Oh my gosh, I hate it so much. Like PowerPoint, like Keynote's a little bit better, but like PowerPoint is like my kryptonite. Like I can't stand it. And so with that, I got really bored. I was creatively starved and I was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I guess I need to give it a shot and see where this goes. And I was scrolling Instagram one day and I saw this lettering challenge. And I had always admired Jessica Hish. Like I had discovered her work, probably around 2012, something like that, as I was a graphic designer. And I had already dabbled in hand lettering a little bit. So luckily at that corporate job, they actually did allow quite a bit of creative flexibility. And so I had done some hand lettering for some like postcards and like flyers and stuff like that, my creative director was really great about like letting us try things. And so I had done a few things before, and I saw this challenge, and I was like, I've always liked lettering. This is kind of the same thing that like as I'm telling you this, I'm realizing it's like kind of the same thing that happened with graphic design. It's like I kind of always had an affinity for this, and I kind of just let it, kind of let it go away, but it's like coming back. And so this challenge was a Crayola marker lettering challenge. So it was like brush lettering, but instead of using a Tombow, which is like so much harder to use, this person was using Crayola markers. And I thought, that's so accessible. Like, that's so great. And it's so much easier to brush letter like that. So that's where I started. I was just doing a brush lettering challenge, and it was literally just for fun. I had an Instagram account, but it was a personal account. And I was like, I'm just going to post stuff and see how it goes. So that was kind of like the birth of where getting into lettering started was brush lettering and Instagram challenges.
Oh, it's so good. So good that, again, you follow your call for, having affinity with something and saying like, okay, I want to explore this, and I'm gonna, continue developing this side of my creativity. And I wonder, nowadays you have a very distinct style, Jessica, and I was wondering how did that come to life? How do you feel? What do you feel were the steps to develop that visual language, if there's any that you can recognize?
Yeah, absolutely. I've thought about this a lot because that is a question I think every artist gets or has actually at some point, is like, how do you find your style? How do you find your style? And I definitely had that question.
Yeah.
I definitely had that question for myself as well. And I think for me, it was one of the things was definitely just making a ton of work. Like I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, I am so sorry, but there is no shortcut. You have to make a ton of work. There is no shortcut. Like that's number one.
Yeah.
And so at that time, as I said, I was very bored at my job. So I would literally spend time at my job. Sorry, y'all, but that company doesn't even exist anymore. So, but I'm like, sorry, y'all. I was at my desk, like lettering and doing other stuff and stuff like that. So definitely just like making a ton of work. And also I would say the other thing that was very tantamount to me developing a style very quickly, especially in lettering, was studying what I liked about people's work. So like studying Jessica Hish and like looking very closely and looking at the decisions that she made. And also you were one of my influences as well. I would look at your work very closely. I would look at your work very closely as well. Like anyone that I could find that was, a big name in the lettering industry, I would just look very closely. And I also, there was copying, there was imitation, but I think that's part of the process. Like, I think that as long as you're not, taking on full credit and saying like, oh, I made this from scratch, but you're and exactly copying someone, that's something completely different. But I think imitating your heroes is an essential part of developing your style. It's something that everyone goes through. It's completely normal. And as long as you recognize that you're developing and that you're practicing and you're acknowledging that you are imitating your heroes, I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. Because I think sometimes, people get it in their head about copying and imitating, but frankly, I think it's essential. I think it's actually unavoidable. If you want to be good at it, you have to study what's working. And to do that, you study the greats, So I would say like up front, those were the two things that helped me develop my style much quicker, was making a ton of work and then studying what I liked about my heroes' work.
I love that. I was yesterday at a podcast interview, and I was talking about something similar. The fact that for me, for instance, my role model was Ken Barber, which is for those listening, is an American lettering artist. And I remember that he was the first person, I took a workshop with him, and that was the first time that I recognized the type of work I wanted to do. So that was the time that I said like, hey, I want to be like him. I want to do whatever he's doing. And by pursuing that type of work, by trying to be like him. I became myself, I found my style.
Exactly.
By trying to follow his work as a North Star, I really found I created a lot more work. Of course, in the beginning, I was imitating, but then my shapes, my own colors started to show up, right? So I think this is
Exactly.
yes, and it's great to have those role models because they give you that North Star, and you will rarely get to do the work like they do it because you're a different person. You have a different background. You have different inspirations. So I love that concept.
Right.
So style comes from making a ton of work. People, you have no way out, and it's great because
No shortcut. Sorry.
no shortcuts. I mean, and this is also great news. If you love doing what you do, then you just continue doing whatever you love doing, and
Mhm.
studying what the people that you admire are doing. What is their decision making? What are the things that they are getting right? And then
Mhm.
yeah, if there's a little bit of imitation, that's right, that's correct, and that's totally fine and normal. And then you will find your own style through that. You found your style, and of course, I believe that, Jessica, your style keeps evolving, right? So it's something that it evolves with every project. And I've seen that you have worked with major names throughout the years, Sol de Janeiro, Garnier, Snapchat. How did you land your first large campaign or your first big project that you think you thought like, well, okay, I'm doing it.
Oh gosh. Well, so I started lettering for fun in 2016. By 2019, I had a little bit of a following on Instagram. I think I was probably at like 3,000 followers or something like that, which was like a huge deal for me. And I got my first small gig doing some enamel pins for a UK based company. And I was like, wow, okay. And they had seen a project of mine that I had done called Petty Postcards, where I had made these mean hand lettered postcards for my ex. It was just a fun project that I did. They saw them and they said, "Hey, can you do something like that for us, but with enamel pins?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely." And so that was my first like small project where I was like, "Okay, maybe this actually could be something. Like people absolutely would pay me to do this." And I would say probably my biggest client from that point, I would say, is probably Target,
Mm,
actually. So Target, if you're around the world, is a major retailer in the US, and it has always been a very design forward company. So it's definitely on the list of a lot of especially American artists to work with.
yeah.
And so they had reached out to me. Actually, it was through an agency. An agency reached out to me, said that they had seen my work on Instagram. So again, Instagram was like essential at this point. And it was kind of how I was like passively marketing myself.
Mm,
And they had seen my work on Pinterest. I'm sorry, not Pinterest, Instagram. And they wanted me to create something for Hispanic Heritage Month. So they were having a campaign and they wanted some like social graphics. And that was I mean, I think I cried when I got that email. Like I felt like the big time. Like I felt like I had made it. It was a big deal. It was like the biggest project like the most, the biggest fee that I had gotten from a project at that point. I think it was like $5,000, which was like such a huge deal for me at the time. And it was aligned with me. It was aligned with who I am as a Latina. It was something that I was passionate about. And not only that, they gave me complete creative freedom. Like I'm talking like almost no direction, almost nothing. Like the only thing they really wanted was, okay, we want you to make three lettering designs with whatever quote you want that's relevant. And we're going to have people use them as their phone
mm,
wallpapers. And then we're also going to do a video that features you and we're going to put it on our platform, which if you go look at Target right now, they have over 1 million followers. And at that time they had over 1 million followers.
wow.
So, yeah, so it was going to feature me and me making the work and stuff like that. And so that was the first like, wow, oh my gosh, like someone really big is paying attention. And someone really big wants me to create work. And not having creative direction was really scary, but it ended up working out. And I still love that project to this day. Like there are definitely things I would do differently now, but like overall, I still think it's like very solid, very like, I'm still proud. It's like still in my portfolio. And it kicked off a bunch of other projects like it. Like I've had a bunch of other projects where they're social first illustrations and lettering. And that's kind of the main avenue that my artwork is being used. So it's kind of like, they always tell you like make the work you want to get hired for. Well, what they don't tell you is when you get hired for one thing, it snowballs and then you keep getting hired for that same thing as well.
That's
So that's
amazing.
kind of what happened to me.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
great to realize that nevertheless you have to put the effort to get that first one, so that is
Yes.
snowballs into the next one.
Yes.
And that's a
Exactly.
perfect segue to talk about your work. For everybody listening, this is our Art in Focus section where we talk about a piece of work of our guests, and we discuss it. And I would love to understand first why you chose this particular piece of work, Jessica.
Yeah, absolutely. So this, if you haven't seen this and you've seen my past work, you're probably like, what happened here? Like what the heck? Like this is so different. It's very different. It has a lot, it's very high gloss, it's very hyper realistic. I would say it's surreal as well. Like it's definitely a huge shift from my early work. And the reason why I chose this is because this illustration kicked off this style for me.
Mm,
And I still remember I drew this on New Year's Eve, 2024.
mm,
So it's been a little bit over a year since I drew this. And at the time, I was struggling with feeling bored with my work. I felt like I had mastered my craft, like the way that I do it, right? Like, now I'm not saying that I'm a master of illustration, but a master of the way that I do my craft. And I was getting very bored.
mm.
I was just bored of the same colors and styles and all the decisions that I was making. I was just ready for something new. And I had been really struggling leading up to this point with trying to make it fun again, trying to make it interesting again. And I had this idea. I was listening to, at the time, I was listening very much to Beyonce's Cowboy Carter album, which, if you know me, you know I'm a massive Beyonce fan, huge Beyonce fan. I love that album. The album, again, called Cowboy Carter, and basically it's kind of a country album. That's a loose term because it's a very genre bending album, but there's a lot of country roots in that, and it really resonated with me because she spoke to her roots as someone who's also from Texas and who has family roots that have been in the South for a really long time and have been involved in like cowboy culture and what a lot of people think of as country. And it was kind of her album to reclaim that. As a Black woman. And so I thought, gosh, that's so inspired. Like I was inspired by that album for like 2 straight years. Like it was great. And so this was from that. Like I was just thinking like if I had to make my version of what I think Cowboy Carter represents, what would that look like? And so I started with the horse. I had the idea in my head of what if it was a horse but it was like crystal or like diamonds or something like that. And I was like, I have no idea how to draw that. I have no clue. And so I hopped on YouTube and I hopped on Skillshare and I watched a bunch of different tutorials. I probably drew this horse. I mean, this is like version 4 of this horse. Like, people are like, I still don't understand how you drew it. I'm like, honestly, me neither. I just watched a bunch of tutorials. I tried it several times until I got it the way that I thought I wanted it to look. And then later on, I actually added the hand because the horse felt like it was like missing something.
Yeah.
And so I added the hand holding it as like a kind of a nod to the sort of like playful femininity that I love in my work and that Beyonce plays with in her work as well. And also to give it this like surreal angle, like, why is there a tiny crystal horse? Like, why are they holding it? Like, like what is the scale here? Like, is it's like there's a surrealness and like a little bit of mystery of like, I'm not sure what's going on here, but it looks really cool.
I love it. I love this piece. And I was thinking, going back to your origins and what we were talking about in the beginning, your roots as the daughter of immigrants from Nicaragua. How do you feel that shows up in your work? Because I know that this is a strong part of your identity. You mentioned that on your website, you mentioned that on social media. So it feels like this is something that defines you as a person, as a creative, and I can totally relate to that. And I wonder if you can feel that this is also coming through your work in some way. Perhaps you feel like there's nothing about this on your work and your style, but perhaps there is, and I wanted to dive into that.
Yeah, I think especially with my work before, especially with my work with Target, as you know, anything for I of course I get tapped for like Hispanic Heritage Month quite a bit. And so I think with that work, I would say that as a child, I I spoke Spanish and English I learned both languages at the same time. But as I got older, I think, because it was just a small family unit, when my parents immigrated here, it was just the two of them. So a lot of people, when they immigrate and they have this entire huge community and this huge family, and that's amazing. And I love that. But for us, it wasn't like that. It was just this small, tiny unit. It was just us. And I think like as I grew up, I sort of lost my connection to my culture. I think I'm sure you can relate to this as an immigrant there's a certain level of assimilation that you want to have because you don't want to be seen as other for whatever reason,
Totally.
whether it's like, for whether it's, personally or, for your career, you don't want to be seen as other. You want to assimilate in a certain way. And I would say that it was done very unconsciously because you're a child, for me, it was like when I was a child and it's like, I didn't really realize that's what I was doing. But the other thing too is like when you're a teenager, you just want to be like everybody else, And for me, there were not Latinos I could count on one hand the number of Latinos that went to my high school. And people of color, there just weren't that many. It was a majority white space. And so I kind of just like assimilated to that. I stopped speaking Spanish and I just didn't, kind of identify with my roots as much. And I think as I got older, especially when I was in college and I met a lot more Latinas, a lot more first generation, Americans, I realized how important it was to keep that stuff because I think, like I said, I think there's always a pressure as a child of immigrants or even as an immigrant as well, to have a certain level of success and to kind of like prove to people that like you can be successful. There's just like a special, strange level of pressure that happens there. And I think part of addressing that pressure for me was, being proud of my roots and remembering that so many people sacrificed, not just my parents, but like generations past. So many people have sacrificed for me to be here right now and do exactly what I want to do, which is be an artist. I'm sure if we could talk to my great, great, great grandparents, they would be very shocked as farmers, farming land and taking care of their house and stuff. They would be very shocked that I'm an artist for a living. But the sacrifices that they and the other people in my family made for me to get here are really important. And I think that's why remembering your culture, bringing your culture with you is super important. So it took me a really long time to understand that. I think I definitely had to mature. I definitely had to kind of go out on my own. I had to meet other Latinos, and spend a lot of time and make more friends with other Latinos. And once I did, I just felt more connected. And as I've gotten older and as I've created work, I have tried my best to infuse it. So a lot of times you'll see, I use the jaguar a lot in my work. The jaguar was a holy, revered creature in the Mayan culture, the indigenous Mayan culture, which is where I would be descended from that Central American area. And so I use symbols, I use colors. I also use I would say like in this piece specifically, the vibrant colors, because I definitely could have done this more subdued and it maybe would have felt more elevated or a little bit more sophisticated. But I chose to go pink, 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 like pink on pink on pink. Like number one, pink is my favorite color. And number two, I've always loved vibrant colors. And I think part of that is celebrating the culture, because a lot of our artwork is extremely vibrant and uses a lot of colors. So one of the major reasons that I use this much color is because of my cultural influences. And so I would say that's probably the strongest cultural influences this work is the fact that I made the choice to make this very loud and very vibrant.
Oh, I love this. I love this because I can totally relate to that. You know, as an immigrant
Hmm.
coming from South America to Germany, I also felt the need to blend in some ways so that you
Yes,
don't become that, you know, the different person. And as you grow
right.
older and you start learning about yourself and what you are, who you are, you start embracing that back again. And I can see that also in my body of work. When I look at the work that I was doing when I first moved to Germany, all colors are a lot more desaturated, and you know, everything is a little bit more structured. And then as I grew older and as I grew as a lettering artist and designer, I started to infuse more of my, you know, culture back in South America into my work. And now I can see like the best of worlds. Like, you know,
Hmm.
Germany shaped me in some way, like US shaped you as well. So that is also part of your culture. You cannot help it, and it's yours. But at the same time, all the
Exactly.
rest is also part of your culture. You know what your parents pass on to you. That's also part of who you are. And I think it's great that you're embracing that, because I feel that that's the thing that makes you stand out. And I love that when I look at your work, I can see the difference. I can see that it's yours. When I look at you and sitting next to your work, I can understand. I can understand who this work is coming from. So I love that. I wanted to ask you one more question about the artwork that you share with us today, which is what are the things that you love, and what are the things that you would change of this artwork?
I love that. Gosh, it's hard to say because I still really love this. Like I still share it. I still use it sometimes. I love that it's very I love the surrealness, like I said. Like there's no, there like what is the scale? Why is the horse a diamond? Why is this person there's some like you can kind of attach whatever meaning you want, which I would say like a lot of my early work was very literal. It was like what you see is what you get. Like there's not a lot of like room for interpretation. It's like especially with lettering, because you're like, okay, I'm lettering a phrase. Like with a phrase is what you see is what you get. And I think with illustration, what's been fun is exploring this more surreal idea of like basically making up my own world. Like I kind of think of things as like their own yeah, their own world, their own universe that they live in. And so like for me, this is like, hot pink cowboy Carter glam world. Like that's what I think of it. So I just love the surrealness of it. I think that was something that pushed me a lot because my work was so literal before. Um, what I would change about it, gosh, I don't know that I would change anything. Is that really pretentious to say? I think
Not at
it's
all.
really
I
good.
love it. I wouldn't change
I think
anything
it's
as well. It's
good.
beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank
But
you.
you know,
Thank
we always
you.
have that
Yeah.
that as artists and creatives, like we look at a piece of work and we think like, oh, I would do this different, or I would change that. And I love that you embrace this piece as it is. I
Yeah.
I find it so beautiful and so vibrant and so representative of your work, although there's no lettering in it. And that's what I love about it as well. And I really enjoyed the fact that you brought this specific piece to share with us in the Art in Focus sections. I would love to dive into licensing, because I know that this is a big part of your work. And by the way, for those listening, Jessica is going to be one of our instructors this year in the Lettering Seminar 2026. She's part of a stellar team of instructors, and she's going to be bringing some more of her knowledge about licensing and sharing her experience. I would love to know, how did you get into that? I know, Jessica, that you have licensed a few pieces of work of yours, and I know that many creatives and artists listening, they want to dive into this world. They want to see their work in products, in other brands, and I would love to dive into how you got into this, Jessica.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, that very first project that I got, which was through Petty Postcards, That was actually my first licensing. It was licensing brand new designs. So I made a line of like 6 designs that were all lettering, and they had some florals around them for enamel pins. And that was my first licensing. So I got an upfront fee for creating the new artwork, and then I made a percentage of royalties after that. And I love to say this number because it's crazy. Like, this is why I love licensing. I made, because of those royalties, I made over $7,000 from that collaboration, which is amazing. It was over quite a long time, but still, like, that was $7,000 I didn't have before, right?
Yeah.
And if I hadn't licensed that work, if I had just used it once, that maybe I would have never made that much money. Maybe I would have made the initial amount. So that's what I love about licensing. And that's honestly where I started. And I started kind of seeing, I think the first person that I saw that was doing licensing quite a bit was Kat Cocolette, which a lot of you may be familiar with. She was really, at the time, I would say like mid 2000, maybe like 2012, 2013. She was really known for her watercolors. So she did all these like she did a lot of like animals and florals and plants and stuff like that. And I had come across maybe a blog or something of hers where she was talking about what art licensing is, like how it allows her to have this like really flexible lifestyle, because she's a digital nomad. And so she was kind of like traveling the world and also making her art, but also making money off her art. And she was able to quit her, agency job. And it sounded so, great and glamorous, and what have you. And so, I just started like looking into it, and I took a few courses. So Good Type has a course on, art licensing for letterers. And I took that one. And I took a couple other courses, and things just kind of went from there. And as I understood how the industry works, and what art directors are looking for, what creative directors are looking for, I've been able to get more and more deals. So and I have some that are like passive. So for example, Society 6, you can just upload your artwork there. It used to be open platform, but recently they've closed it off. But basically I upload my artwork on there, and people around the world can buy a print on demand on a bunch of different types of products. And so that's very passive. I just upload that stuff, and then I get paid every month. But then there's also more active things. So like I licensed some existing artwork to Garnier last year for some packaging. So they had seen my work, I think, on Instagram again, and they had seen it, and they said, hey, this is actually perfect. We're doing a campaign for Hispanic Heritage Month, and we want to use it for packaging. So that's kind of a different type of licensing, but it's still a licensing deal, because essentially they're renting your artwork for a certain amount of time. So for this, it was a Hispanic Heritage Month campaign. So they only rented it, quote unquote, for about 3 months. And so what that means is that I can still use that artwork today. And that's the great thing about licensing. Depending on how your contracts are structured, you can reuse artwork.
Totally. Just to make it clear for those that are listening that are wondering, like, what the heck is licensing? Can you explain that to us?
Of course, yeah. So art licensing is a way for companies, brands, to essentially rent your artwork. So there are different ways you can structure your contracts, but essentially, let's say I want to create greeting cards for Papyrus, which is a great brand, right? They make these beautiful cards. So Papyrus will pay you to rent your artwork for greeting cards. So it can either be, and it can be exclusive or non-exclusive. There's kind of like some nuances there, but essentially you're creating a piece of art and you're able to make money off of it continuously. And you can also do that through royalties as well. So they'll pay you a certain percentage, somewhere between, depending on the product, the industry, 2 to 10% royalties. So for example, those enamel pins, I created 6 designs, and then I also made 10% royalties off of that. So every quarter I would get paid 10% of the net sales of what they were selling of my designs. So
amazing. Thank you for explaining that. I was wondering because as you were speaking, I felt like, I get the sense that, Jessica, you're a very organized, driven person. I felt like, okay, I first feel like licensing requires a certain level of of a structure and organization, because you have to create first the artwork. You have to create, if I'm not wrong, you have to create some sort of collection that you put forward and that other brands can license from you, right? So you, in a way, you have to set up some sort of like shop for art that you first have to think about. First, you have to do your research. So I feel like there's some structure that you have to put forward in order to make this happen for you. And as I hear you, I feel like you have that type of a structure. And I know that you also have this, this concept or this idea of the creative hygiene that you mentioned to me. And can you explain that to us? And also if that has to do in any way with all the things that you have achieved personally in your career?
Yeah, so creative hygiene is a phrase that I first heard from Andy J. Pizza on Creative Pep Talk podcast, which I'm sure you and many other people listening are familiar with. It's a fantastic podcast. Love Andy. Shout out Andy. Would love to be on your podcast too. Um, but I heard it on his podcast first. And it was this idea, I kind of liken it to just like your daily hygiene. I kind of liken it to like brushing your teeth every day. Like that's a hygiene that you have to do to stay healthy as a human, right? We have to take baths and wash our faces and brush our teeth and all the things. So I like the idea of creative hygiene. The way that I would describe it is like the daily little habits that build up to keep your creativity fresh and to keep your creativity healthy. And so I would say this is kind of like a new concept for me, actually. And it kind of was mind blowing when I heard of it, and I realized, because right now at this time I'm kind of going through the same thing again, where I'm feeling a little bit unsure about my artwork as it's evolving. I'm kind of like in the middle of the evolution of what I want the next iteration of my work to be. And so it's been really difficult. And so some things have been really hard. So while, for example, drawing has become a little bit anxiety inducing for me, which is not ideal when that's how you make money. But also, beyond that, it's not ideal to live a sustainable creative life either, right? So even on a personal level, I knew I needed to address it. And so when I heard this concept, it's one thing that I like to do is, I would say like, well, I don't need to draw every day. Like I can crank out stuff when I need to, like, it's fine. And you hear all the, basically everyone who's like a thought leader in the industry is like, oh yeah, I draw every day. Like whether that means like a little doodle or a sketch or a full illustration or whatever they mean, like they're doing it every day. And I, for some reason, thought I could get away with not doing that. And I'm realizing that actually that practice of like just making marks and sketching every day, even if it's just like the smallest thing you can think of, is a way to keep that creative hygiene. It's like brushing your teeth, right? Like if I only brush my teeth and floss once a month, then I'm not going to be very healthy. So it's the same thing with creativity. If I'm only sketching every month, which sometimes I would go like a stretch and not touch my iPad for like a month. And then I would and then I would have to create something for a client, or, oh, I'm going to make something new for licensing or whatever it is. And so, yeah, so that's kind of where that came from. And it's something that I'm exploring now as someone who's feeling a little bit of anxiety, a little bit unsure, about my style and the way my work is going.
I'm just curious to know what are the doubts that you're currently having in terms of your work. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, again, I'm still, it's funny because I brought up that diamond horse illustration that we talked about earlier. And I feel like if you look at my work, I have maybe like a handful more pieces that are in that like hyper realistic style that look very different from sort of my like flat graphic style that I was doing before. And I guess the struggle that I'm having is that it's so different. I've been worried that my audience won't come with me. You know what I mean? Like they'll be like, this isn't what I signed up for. Like, I'm confused. I don't want to confuse, and not just my audience, but also potential clients. Like, I don't want them to look at my portfolio and be like, this looks like two different people. I'm kind of confused. And also like just feeling comfortable. Cause like I said, when I drew that diamond horse, I didn't know how to draw that. I had the idea in my head. I had no idea how to draw it. And I started just like looking at all these tutorials and like piecing things together from like different tutorials to try to figure out how to do it. Had to try it multiple times before I got to something that I was happy with. And so there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of just nervousness of like expanding that style. And also like, I'm just putting too much pressure on myself. I'm putting pressure on myself for it to be good the first time when it's not going to be. Like when you're evolving, when you're creating a new style, when you're trying something new, it's never going to be perfect the first time. You might luck out and it might be, maybe, but even if it is, when you try the second time, it won't be, you know? So that's kind of the like uncertainty that I'm feeling right now, is just like, where is this going? Are people going to come with me? And I'm being a perfectionist, which I'm trying to let go of, which is why, one of the creative hygiene things that I'm doing for myself is sketching. Not every day. I started really, really small. I'm sketching 3 times a week. So I literally set a timer for 5 minutes and I sketch for 5 minutes and then that's it. And what I'm trying to do with that is retrain my nervous system that drawing is fun. Drawing is meditative. Drawing is joyful, and not tie it to, productivity, outcome. Is this good? Is this bad? But more like, remember when you used to draw just for fun? Remember when like this is what you wanted to do more than anything and you're doing it now? So, by doing these little 5-minute sketch times, like I'm brushing my teeth more often, and that way I'm more healthy in the end, or I'm healthier in the end.
I love this. I love this because I think that many of our listeners are like nodding with you and saying like, thank you, Jessica, for that reminder. I think something really challenging about the work that we do is that we have turned our hobbies into our livelihood. And sometimes that
Yes.
turns, the act of drawing becomes like a reminder of like I'm working, right? And I think it's great that
Yes.
you're doing that. You're retraining your nervous system to say like, okay, this is fun. I can also do this for fun. People pay me for this, but I can also do it just because I enjoy it. And I think that's such a healthy practice to remind yourself as a creative that you are doing something that you love. And yes, sometimes people pay you for this, and yes, sometimes you have to finish the project for the deadline, and sometimes you are in a rush, and sometimes you don't get exactly to the result that you envisioned. But at the end of the day, this is something that you chose, that you want to do, and I love that reminder for myself, for all of our listeners, and I think this is a super healthy. A habit. And I was wondering, as you incorporate this habit into your routine, I'm thinking, Jessica, you run your own creative business. So besides keeping your creativity healthy, you also need to keep other things going, right? Your client acquisition
Yeah.
machine, your
Yep.
social media feed, which is
Mm,
by what you mentioned in this podcast, it is also something for you to acquire clients. Many of your clients
mhm.
found you on social media. So how do you keep all of that together? Do you have some sort of system? Do you have some sort of a structure? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I have one main structure, which is a task management program. So I used to use Asana, which I love, but I moved on to Notion and built a well, actually, I bought a template from GoodType. Actually, GoodType had a template that's like a business hub. So it has a task management system. It has a social media calendar. It has I think it even has like a client like portal if you want to use that. It has like a place to store your resources. So I use that. That's kind of like my central place where I keep everything. So I have like different projects, and then within the projects I have sometimes sub projects, and then I have like tasks associated with everything. And I also one of the other structures that I have in place, that's kind of like my day to day, but in terms of like how to keep the structure going, and not, because I'm going to be in my fifth year of business. In
Woo!
August, I'll celebrate my
Woo!
5 years. Yay! And and I think one thing that and I recognized that this was an issue, but I wasn't really sure how to kind of fix it
Mm,
until now.
mm,
I feel like I was very short-sighted in the beginning of my career. Like I could only think ahead like a month, right? And that can only be a certain amount of sustainable.
mm.
You really have to think pretty far ahead, especially if you're doing multiple income streams like I am. So it was really hard for me to project like 6 months out. What am I going to be doing? Like everything was very short sighted, and I knew it was a challenge. I knew it was something I needed to change to make it more sustainable, and I wasn't really sure how to do it. But I did a lot of like thinking and strategizing and like picking brains of friends of mine and stuff like that. And I realized like, I have to strategize in advance and I have to think of things in advance. And so one of the things I started doing was weekly reviews. So I do a weekly review every Friday. I do a monthly review at the end of every month, and I do a quarterly review at the end of every quarter. And I've kind of always done a version of this, but I feel like the version that I have now is much better than what I used to have a couple of years ago, because now I know what to focus on. I think when you first start your business, I think it's important to say yes to as many things as you can and try as many things as you can. And I was doing that for a long time. I was like, I'll try this, I'll try that, I'll try this. But that can get really overwhelming. I think that's what happened with me. And so this year I've definitely like scaled down. I focused. I'm like, okay, I experimented with this thing. Like, so one thing I did was like, a couple of years ago, I tried to make my own course and I thought it was going to, I thought I was going to do amazing, and it did not. It didn't do well. I spent a ton of time on it. And so like, I realized, okay, like a course is not for me right now. I've already tried it. I have the data that tells me, hey, this is not the right time for this. You couldn't generate enough from this. So, it doesn't mean goodbye forever. You can shelve ideas sometimes and come back
Yeah.
to them later when the conditions are better. But yeah, I feel like now at like almost year 5, I have enough data from all of the things that I put out that I can say, okay, this is showing promise. This didn't work. I'm going to let it go. And then I'm able to like prune things. And what's kind of keeping all that structure together is doing these reviews um, every week, month, and quarter, so
Mm.
that I can kind of keep my eye on the ball, and not just in the present, but also project and say, okay, in the summer, I have a slump with client work. So what am I going to do to generate some income so that I'm not scrambling trying to get client work when I know client work doesn't come for me in the summer?
Mhm.
So that's something that is I feel honestly, this is probably the most confident I felt at the beginning of a year in a long time, because I just feel like I've strategized so much better now. And that's partly the structures that I have, but it's also like the experience that I have.
I love that because you're kind of identifying the seasons of your business. You're kind of seeing, okay, when does the client work decline, and then how can I use my other income streams to balance that out, or how can I use that time that I have extra during summer
Right.
to invest it
Yeah.
into developing other income streams or making them bigger if they are already in their beginning phase. And I also love this structure that you created for yourself, this weekly review, monthly, quarterly review, because I feel like these are the structures that you will follow if you will be working as an employee in a company. You will have those quarterly
Yeah.
reviews, you will have those monthly reviews, you will have those
Mhm.
weekly meetings with the team or with your boss. And why will you stop doing that when you're working for yourself? You're also running a business, even if it's you doing all of the things, right? So you need to also
Mhm.
create some sort of system to keep yourself accountable, because you don't have any boss, you don't have any, HR, head of HR keeping
Right.
you accountable for your work. You have to keep yourself accountable for your work. And these are the structures that really make and build a sustainable freelance business. And I love that you're bringing that up, because I know that many of our listeners are thinking like, okay, I never thought about this. Going freelance is just like doing the work as it comes. And it
Right.
is also a business. You also have to generate revenue. You also have to think about, what's coming next and how you're gonna keep the lights on. So I
Yeah.
love this. And I was wondering how social media plays a role here. You mentioned that so many times, and it seems that it's a very valid acquisition machine for you. At the same time, I know that
Mhm.
many of our listeners are thinking like, yeah, I should be doing some social media, but at the same time, I have no idea how to deal with social media at the time, because social media is no longer what it used to be. Before you would post this beautiful diamond horse that you share with us today, and you will get hundreds of likes, and today it can go like unseen. So how do you deal
Right.
with that yourself, knowing that this is an important
Yeah.
part of acquiring clients for yourself?
Yeah, so you're 100% right. It is not the same landscape as when I was there in 2016.
Yeah.
It was so the thing that was so great about it was that it was very easy to tell what was resonating with
Mm,
people. It's the thing that got the most likes. It's the thing that got the most engagement. And you could tell, oh, I'm onto something here. People really like this. And now it's almost impossible to tell because the views aren't there. So if people aren't seeing it, you have no idea if it's resonating or not. And even if it is being seen, I've noticed that there's less engagement. So people are more just scrolling without even liking it anymore.
yeah.
At least back then they would like it. So you could look at that count and look at the, you know, analyze the data that way. And it's a little bit different now. And so the way that I kind of use social media now, I've definitely evolved. I was somebody who, would post 3 times a week without fail.
Mm,
Like it didn't matter like if I'm reposting something old or if it's something new or whatever it is. Like I would just post something new. But I have realized that honestly, the return on investment just isn't there
mm,
anymore to do that. There's really no reason for me personally to do that anymore. So I think of it more as like a gateway to my portfolio
mm.
more than my main, because I think I treated it more like my main portfolio back then when it got more views and more engagement. And now I treat it as like a portfolio. So I kind of keep it to like, try to keep it to new work and I kind of keep it to like greatest hits. Like, okay, I know people love this, so I'm going to repost this. I haven't posted this in a while. And my cadence is more now like instead of 3 times a week, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday without fail, I just post when I have something new to post.
Mm.
And I make sure that I make sure that I do stories. I like to engage with my audience. I like to show people that I'm a full developed person and not just a page, right? And so it's very much like the rule that I gave myself is like you have to post once a week, but it can be whatever.
Mm.
It can be fun, it can be a video, it can be which and I don't do a lot of video by the way.
Mm.
I know that like everyone's like, oh, if you want to grow you should post reels. I'm like, you know what, I don't care to grow
Mm.
actually. Like I really don't. I don't care to I actually think follower count really doesn't matter as
Mm.
much anymore. It used to matter a lot, I feel like, and I think now it really doesn't. I think what's more important now is that people, number one, they know that you're active because if you haven't posted to Instagram in 2 years, they're going to assume you're not doing work anymore.
Yeah.
So just whatever cadence makes sense for you to say, hey world, I'm still here, I'm still making work, I'm still hireable. That's really kind of the most important thing. And then like funneling them to your portfolio would be like I think the second thing. And also just realizing like follower count really doesn't matter. I mean, I've worked with some really big name brands and I only have 15,000 followers.
Mm.
That's not that big. Like I know that, I have friends that are 50,000, 80,000, 100,000, 150,000. And we're all getting similar, work. And so, having 15,000 doesn't stop me from getting good jobs. It also doesn't stop me from getting social media work
Mm.
specifically. So like the project with Target, I did a similar one with Toyota. I've done a similar one with Society 6 and I was maybe around 10,000 when I got those deals. So it's really not as important. So I would say just like keep active so that people know that you're around and you're working and stuff like that. Because if you don't post, they will assume oh, well, they must be busy or, oh, maybe they stepped away or whatever. And yeah, try to keep it to like your best work, like your greatest hits, because like it's not worth to me spending every single day trying to post something when most likely no one's even going to see it. So if you are going to post something, you might as well just post the best thing that you have. That's kind of, it's a completely different approach than it was 10 years ago.
Mm.
But in some ways, I actually think it's freeing in some ways, because back then it was like, oh, the more you have to post more, you have to post more, you have to post videos, you have to do this, you have to do that. And now it's like, well, nobody's seeing it anyway. So just pull back a little bit. And just as long as you look active and you're engaged with your audience and you're responsive if people do DM you, I think that's way more important than posting every single day.
I love that. I think it's so freeing for many of our listeners, because I think especially mentioning that you have friends that have, I don't know, 10 times the followers that you have, and they get the same
Mm-hmm.
kind of work that you are getting. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really intentional also for a business owner like you to say like, okay, where does my time goes, and where does it make sense to put in my time, right? And if social media doesn't feel like the place where you need to be and you need to invest a ton of time because you still get work and you still have ways of acquiring clients, then let that be for you, and that's it. But I think it's very intentional to decide, hey, where do I want to put my work, and what do I see coming from that investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you see that there's results for you, then great, keep on doing that. But if you feel like
Right.
that is not moving the needle, then just keep it going.
Let it go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can keep it going, just maintain it, but it doesn't need to
Yeah.
become your focus anymore. I love that. I think many of our listeners are like, you know what, Instagram?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I love what you said about like if it is working for you, if you are posting every day and it is working for you, then keep by all means keep going.
Yeah.
But if you're someone who's like I'm posting and I'm not getting anything, like don't waste your time. It's just a marketing tool. It's not the end all be all. There's plenty of other ways to market yourself. There's
Hmm.
LinkedIn, there's Pinterest, there's Twitter, there's Threads, there's a bunch, in-person events. There's a million other ways you can market yourself. It's not the end all be all.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, as we come closer to the end of this episode, I would love to hear what excites you the most about the moment we are living right now, in terms of creativity, possibilities. What is Jessica like looking forward to?
Oh man, gosh, that's a really good question. I think like gosh, I hate to bring up AI, but here we are. Here we are. I
Yeah.
hate to bring it up, but it's like the big elephant in the room
Yeah.
anytime you're talking about creativity. I think that we're gonna see. I think we're already seeing a backlash against AI, and AI generated images and video specifically for good reason. And I think that that is going to lead to kind of a renaissance in the creative industry where we are going to have to figure out ways to like almost like prove our humanness and almost like consciously decide to make mistakes and be imperfect and also use our specific voice. We were talking a lot about finding your creative style, your voice, however you want to call it. And I think that's going to be essential because the thing that I always think about AI work, is AI does not have a background.
Mm.
AI does not have a story. AI does not have a culture. Those things don't exist
Mm.
in a machine.
Mm.
They only exist in humanity. And those are going to be the kinds of things that separate the AI slop from genuine human work and human interaction. And I think that people are going to embrace it. I think we're already seeing, and I'm not going to be surprised to see more of it, more people going analog.
Mm.
I think, people are abandoning their smartphones for flip phones now. I'm seeing people, make more analog art than digital art. I think we're going to see this kind of renaissance where we separate ourselves even more from machines, to keep the humanity in art. And so I think, my takeaway for anybody listening would be lean into your unique your uniqueness, whatever makes you unique. And this is kind of my overarching philosophy too with any creative that I talk to is, to be yourself. I have this mural in my office that says be unapologetically you. And that's kind of my like mission statement as an artist. And I think that that's going to be more important than ever. Telling your story, telling your narrative, leaning into your culture, leaning into your specific identity, your specific experiences. AI can never replicate the experiences that you have as a human. It's just not possible. And so lean into that in your work. And I think it's going to be incredible. I think we're going to see a renaissance of that, as a response to AI. And I think that, as scary and overarching as AI feels, I think us having a creative response to it is really, really exciting.
Oh, amen. I love all the things that you said, and I can totally understand the fear of the the creative community, and I can also understand how fascinating it is to see all this
Yeah.
evolvement of technology. And at the same time, we are very early in the process of that, right? There's
Hmm.
still
Hmm.
no regulations, no discussions, or now there's starting to be discussions around it. But I feel like right now is really like we're all fascinated by it. And at the same time, it feels like, this huge thing that we don't know how it's going to react. And I can totally see
Right.
the same happening that there will be like kind of like parallel markets. There will be the market for templates and things made by AI, and there will be the market for
Yes.
real human made things. And this is where
A hundred
it's
percent.
so important to be unapologetically you, and show your story and share who you are and put yourself in front of the work, because that's what makes that is going to differentiate you from any template, anything that is like automated. So I love that reminder for our listeners. And to close this episode, Jessica, we are gonna play a fun game, which is a quick
Okay.
complete the sentence game. So I start the sentence
Okay.
and you complete
Okay.
it. Okay.
Okay, great.
My creative energy feels strongest when
I'm well rested.
on my desk you will always find
My notebook where I write all my notes and weekly reviews and meeting notes and stuff like that.
one boundary I've learned to protect is
My energy.
something artists don't talk about enough is.
You don't have to be the most talented artist in the room to succeed. You can succeed and not be the quote unquote best artist.
Oh, I love this. Um, con- confidence as a creative means
Being unapologetically you, just like we've talked about here.
right now feels like the perfect moment too.
Connect with yourself and connect with nature.
Oh, Jessica, I love it. I love this conversation, every second of it. Thank you so much
Thank
for being
you.
with us today. I'm really looking forward to your lecture inside the lettering seminar this year, and I know our students are really looking forward to learn from you. Jessica, where can people find you? And also, where can people subscribe to the Thriving Artist, your newsletter?
Yes, yes. So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is at @SeeJessLetter, so SeeJessLetter. And my website is jessicamolina.com. So it's just my name.com. If you want to sign up to my newsletter, I send a quarterly newsletter called The Thriving Artist. I just kind of go behind the scenes and give like creative business advice, creative tips. And that would be at jessicamolina.com/newsletter. And you can sign up there.
Amazing. We're gonna add all the links to follow Jessica and to sign up for her newsletter in the show notes. In the meantime, Jessica, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you for having me. Yes, it was so fun. I could talk to you forever. So
Totally, totally. And to everybody listening, thank you so much for joining today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a creative friend, an artist friend, a designer friend who may enjoy it. See you on the next episode of Open Studio. Bye bye.
bye, y'all.